Here's an updated list of the best sports cars in GTA Online. This might be the last one for GTA 5 before the next GTA comes out. We've come a long way, there's a lot of really good cars, and honestly the sports class is absolutely stacked. There's a lot of sports cars on this list that are way better than a lot of supercars even. So let's get straight into it. Beginning with the Stinger TT, we're gonna go from the least best to the best of the best. It has the longest full name out of any car on this list. It's the Grotti GTO Stinger TT. Being HSW upgradable, it holds one of the fastest top speeds in the game. But as you can see in the gameplay, it does drift a good amount. It's one of those more slippery fast cars that are a bit tougher to control. So I'd say probably for more experienced players that can actually handle tougher cars like this one, it's definitely not easy like some other ones on this list. The main highlight of it is definitely the top speed with it. In a race with a lot of turns and specifically a lot of sharp turns, you definitely don't want to use this vehicle on top of a $2.4 million price tag in the first place. That is a lot of money. Getting a fully upgraded Stinger TT is probably going to run you about $4 million, but it's worth noting this is one of the very few vehicles in the game that are both Imani Tech upgradable and HSW upgradable. It's a great vehicle to use, especially in free roam because it's super fast, and on top of that you can put the missile lock on jammer so you're way safer around the street. Very solid sports car, definitely in the top 10 best in the game. Then we have the Paragon S, which is a pretty different vehicle from the Stinger TT. For one thing, it has way better traction, way better handling in general. Not as fast of a top speed as the Stinger TT, for example, but personally I prefer vehicles with better handling with a tiny bit slower top speed, like the Paragon S. It's super easy to use. It's got the active spoiler on the back of it, so when you stop the vehicle, it goes down, but then when you start accelerating, it goes up again. That's a pretty unique touch. On top of that, the stock wheels are wheels that you cannot find in any Los Santos customs, and I actually managed to color these wheels, making them look even cooler. So honestly, really love cars that have unique stock wheels like this. This Paragon S is also Imanitech upgradable, plus it's got the armor plating option, so it takes a couple missiles to blow it up, plus no one can lock onto you. So a fantastic vehicle to use in free roam as well. Some pretty cool grille options with either the paint job or some chrome touches. My favorite part about the vehicle is definitely the livery. I went for a pretty simple one. Tons of different categories to customize, including 25 different spoiler options. There's so much to customize. I absolutely love it. One of the most customizable sports cars in the entire game. Really recommend the Paragon S. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. One of the most unique-looking sports cars in the game is hands down the Panhard Lockerus with some crazy acceleration to it, and some really good traction as well. It does lack a little bit in top speed given that it's an electric vehicle. Fully electric car, which I guess is a hit or miss for a lot of people. Some people like it, some people dislike it. For a bit smaller of a racetrack, this car is perfect for it. It's really easy to turn with it. Great traction, as I said. I wouldn't recommend it for drag races or anything like that, but turning with it is just an absolute breeze. I mean, we can easily maneuver with this thing, and it's actually pretty difficult to spin out with it on the road. It does feel really good to drive such a grippy car to the road like this one. By the way, you can buy the Paragon S for $2 million, which is actually a pretty decent price point. That's really not super overpriced if you ask me. And then the Lockerus is also at a pretty similar price point, just under $2 million. Before upgrades though, I mean, it is HSW and Imani Tech upgradable, so you're gonna spend more money on the upgrades than the Paragon S. Another fantastic car right there. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. The Ocelot Pariah is a sports car that's been in the top 5 of sports cars for so many years now. It mainly shines in top speed, feels a little bit heavy to drive. It kind of reminds me of the Stinger TT, just with a heavier car without HSW. This one is actually not HSW upgradable. I didn't want this entire list to be only HSW cars just because there's still people that play on old gen, and sometimes in races people do like to turn HSW mods off. I would say this is the second best non-HSW sports car in the entire game, which is pretty respectable, especially since this car came out so many years ago, and it's still considered one of the best out there. It also has a pretty reasonable price tag of just above $1,400,000. That might be the cheapest car on this list, so if you're looking for something a bit more affordable, even though there's faster and better handling cars than this one, I will say that. So for people on a budget, you probably want to be looking at the Pariah, but honestly, I would definitely recommend saving money for the next couple options on this list. Anyway, let's move on to the next one. Another Grotti vehicle in the list. This time we have the Grotti Italy RSX, one of the best-looking sports cars out there. Unfortunately, it does come at a price though. I mean, this one is definitely only for the rich of GTA Online. Without spending any money on HSW or Monotech, it's gonna run you a buy it now price of just about $3,500,000, or a trade price of about $2,600,000. I would highly recommend unlocking the trade price for this thing, because $3,500,000 for the stock price, even of a good sports car like this one, is absolutely insane. Not worth that much. Of course, there's a lot of pros to this car though. I mean, for one thing, it's an amazing looking car both from the front of it and the back of it. The engine block in the back looks super cool. The exhaust is also really sick. Great customization, which we'll take a look at here in a second, and undoubtedly one of the better looking cars. On top of that, it's a great all-arounder vehicle with pretty decent handling. Not the best of the best, but much better than something like the Stinger TT or the Pariah if you ask me. On top of great acceleration and some great top speed too. The exhaust in the middle is honestly such a cool one. I personally like the triple exhaust the best. Some white on there. Let's move on to another vehicle which is going to be the best non-HSW car in the game. Or best non-HSW sports car, I gotta say. It's actually another Grotti vehicle. This time we have the Grotti Italy GTO, not the Italy GTO Stinger TT. This is actually, I guess you can say, the little brother version of the Stinger TT. That's right. You better take a picture of this beautiful looking car. It's technically the Stinger TT's little brother because it's non-HSW upgradable, and it does have a little slower of a top speed. But that does make sense with a non-HSW car. Although that doesn't necessarily mean it's a less good car than the Stinger TT. It doesn't have any HSW upgrades. It doesn't even have a Monotech, I don't think. This is mainly compared to the Ocelot Pariah. But personally, I prefer this one much more just because it has much better handling and a tiny bit slower top speed than the Pariah. Which I think is fine because most races have a lot of turns. Really fun to drive this around. It has some amazing traction. You're not going to be spinning out with this thing too often. And this might be a hot take, but honestly, I think the Italy GTO is as good, if not a better looking car than the Italy RSX. And yes, from my experience, this does have better handling than the RSX. For so long, this was my go-to sports car for racing. Now we have some HSW cars that have way better top speed, so this can't really compete with those. For old gen specifically, this is the best sports car out there. It's got a pretty reasonable price tag coming in at just under $2 million. Way cheaper and more worth the money than the Italy RSX, if you ask me. One of the two kings of the sports class is the Niobe HSW, relatively new car in GTA Online that automatically became a fan favorite in the community because of how good it looks and how good it performs. It is pretty close to perfect when it comes to handling. I would say really good handling for a super fast car. And as you guys know me, I do prefer a bit better handling than a bit better top speed. Now initially it comes in at a pretty decent price, especially for how good this car is at just under $1.9 million. The catch is it has a really expensive HSW upgrade, which is going to cost you another $1.8 million. Meaning if you want to get a fully upgraded HSW Niobe, it's going to run you about $4 million. Despite this crazy price tag, I do think it's one of the best all-arounder cars you can get in this game. So it might just be worth it, even though it's very comparable with another car we're going to have here. That has the fastest top speed amongst all land vehicles in the entire game. That is the HSW Banshee GTS, one of the newest vehicles we have. Has a ridiculously fast top speed, and I think the Niobe and the Banshee GTS kind of go head-to-head. They're pretty much the most comparable fast HSW sports cars we have in the game. I would say these are the two top dogs when it comes to top speed. And just performance in general. Now the differences in performance are pretty minor, but the thing with the Banshee GTS is it has a bit better top speed, but less good handling than the Niobe. So it's really up to personal preference which one you prefer. Either more top speed or better handling. I will say though, for having such a ridiculously high top speed, the Banshee has some okay handling. It's really not something super out of control, like for example the Stinger TT. That one you could definitely spin out a good amount when going at a high speed. This one is actually alright. Rockstar could have easily made this handling way worse. Because of how high the top speed of this thing is, it's even a little higher than the Hakuchu Drag HSW, which is an extremely fast motorcycle. Top speed is gonna be right at about 180. Maybe 180 something miles per hour. Super fast vehicle. Highly recommend using it. And as of right now, it is the fastest land vehicle in the game. And in my opinion, the best sports car in the game as well. So hopefully you guys did go on to enjoy this video. I hope you all enjoy that one. And peace.